The conference room air conditioning hummed like a swarm of distant wasps, and Maria Chen felt the chill settle into her bones as she stood at the front of the room, her quarterly operations report frozen on the screen behind her. The new COO Harrison Vale hadn't looked up from his phone once during her presentation, his thumb scrolling in lazy circles, while 43 slides of carefully compiled data hung in the fluorescent void. When he finally spoke, his voice carried that particular brand of corporate poison that tastes like mint and burns like acid. "I'm going to stop you right there," he said, still not looking up. "This is exactly the kind of bloated, redundant analysis that's been holding this company back. How many hours did you waste on this?" The room seemed to contract around Maria. 22 other employees suddenly fascinated by their laptops, their coffee cups, anything but the small woman in the navy blazer who'd spent 3 weeks preparing data that could save the company $2 million annually. She felt the heat creep up her neck, knew her face was flushing, knew that everyone could see it. The projector fan whirred overhead, pushing out warm air that smelled faintly of burnt dust. "The analysis identified several cost-saving opportunities in our vendor contracts," Maria said, keeping her voice steady even as her hands trembled slightly against the clicker. "If you'll look at slide 18... No, I don't think I will." Harrison finally looked up, his blue eyes sharp as surgical instruments. "Effective immediately, all operational reports will go through my office first. We're implementing a new efficiency protocol. If it can't be summarized in 2 slides, it's not worth the board's time." He stood smoothing his Italian suit jacket, the fabric whispering wealth with every movement. "And Maria, next time you want to play detective with vendor contracts, remember that some of us have actual relationships with these partners. Relationships that matter more than your spreadsheets." She understood the threat perfectly. Her analysis had identified inflated invoices from Meridian Solutions, a vendor that happened to golf with Harrison every second Saturday. She documented markups of 30% above market rate, systematic overbilling, and services that existed only on paper. But now, standing in that Arctic conference room, with her career evaporating like breath in winter air, she simply nodded. "Of course, Mr. Vale." "Harrison," he corrected, flashing that television smile that never reached his eyes. "We're all family here." After the meeting dissolved, Maria packed her laptop with mechanical precision, trying not to notice how quickly the room emptied, how her colleagues fled like startled birds. Only James Weston lingered, the facilities engineer, who'd helped her trace the Meridian invoices through purchase orders and delivery logs. He pretended to organize his notepad, waiting until they were alone. "That was bullshit," he said quietly. "That was reality," Maria replied, sliding her laptop into its case. "He knew exactly what I'd found." "So what do we do?" Maria looked at the empty conference room, at the ghost of her presentation, still glowing on the screen, at the coffee rings on the mahogany table that formed perfect circles like targets. "We follow protocol. I'll submit my reports through his office." But they both knew she was lying. That night, Maria sat in her one-bedroom apartment in Fairfield Heights, laptop warm against her thighs, going through 5 years of employment at Nexus Corp. She'd started as a junior analyst, worked 60-hour weeks without complaint, earned 2 promotions through merit alone. Her personnel file was spotless. Her reviews glowed. She'd saved the company millions through careful analysis and process improvements, though her name rarely appeared on the final reports. She preferred it that way, or thought she did. She'd believed in the work itself and the quiet dignity of doing things right. The mistake she realized now was thinking that competence was its own protection. Her phone buzzed, a text from James. "Check your personal email." She switched tabs, found his message with a subject line that made her stomach drop. "You need to see this." Attached were 3 documents from the HR system screenshots he'd managed to capture before they disappeared. The first was a performance improvement plan, with her name on it, dated 2 weeks from now, citing failure to adapt to new efficiency protocols and resistance to collaborative leadership. The second was a job posting for senior operations analyst, her position set to go live in 30 days. The third was an email chain between Harrison and HR discussing transition planning for redundant roles. She wasn't being criticized. She was being erased. Maria closed her laptop and sat in the dark, listening to the suburban sounds of Fairfield Heights filtering through her windows, a dog barking, someone's television bleeding through thin walls, the distant hum of the highway. She thought about her mother, who'd cleaned office buildings at night to put her through college, who'd said, "Maria, you work with your mind now. No one can take that from you." She thought about her student loans, still $40,000 deep. She thought about her health insurance, which covered the antidepressants she'd needed since her father's death 2 years ago. Then she thought about Harrison Vale's smile in that conference room, predatory and certain. She opened her laptop again and began typing, "James, I need everything you have on Meridian Solutions. Everything." The next morning arrived gray and humid, the kind of mid-Atlantic August day that makes the air feel like soup. Maria arrived at the office at 7:30, an hour before most employees, 30 minutes before Harrison's Porsche would purr into the executive lot. The building's lobby still smelled like industrial cleaner and coffee from the security desk, where Carl the night guard was finishing his shift. "Early bird today, Ms. Chen. Just trying to stay ahead of things, Carl." He gave her a knowing look. 20 years working security, he'd seen plenty of employees arrive early after being dressed down by management. "You take care now." Her desk sat in the middle of the third floor, part of the open office concept that Harrison had championed as collaborative innovation, but which mostly meant everyone could see everyone else's defeats in real time. Maria powered up her workstation, logged into the systems, and began her real work documenting everything. The efficiency protocols Harrison had mentioned were already loaded into the company portal. She read through them with growing disbelief. Every report now required executive pre-approval. All vendor communications had to be copied to the COO's office. Access to historical purchase data was being restricted to essential personnel only, a list that didn't include her name. It wasn't just control, it was a systematic dismantling of oversight. "You're here early." She looked up to find Diane Morse, the company treasurer, holding 2 cups of coffee. Diane was 62, had survived 4 CEOs and 6 restructures, and possessed the kind of institutional knowledge that made her either invaluable or dangerous, depending on who was asking. "Couldn't sleep," Maria admitted. Diane set one of the coffees on Maria's desk. "Harrison's efficiency protocols, a washed, sursi wash, wash. You've seen them?" "Honey, I've seen everything, including the invoice approvals that came through last night. Meridian Solutions, $300,000 for consulting services, no deliverables specified." Diane sipped her coffee, her eyes steady behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Funny thing is, I don't recall any consulting project in the budget." Maria felt something shift in her chest, a tiny spark of possibility. "Would you be willing to document that?" "Already have. The question is, what are you planning to do with it?" "Follow protocol," Maria said carefully. "Submit everything through proper channels." Diane smiled, the kind of expression that had probably terrified junior accountants for decades. "Of course you will. And when those proper channels lead nowhere, you might want to know that the quarterly board review is in 3 weeks. Public company means public meeting. Shareholders have rights, even small shareholders." She pulled a folded paper from her cardigan pocket. "Like ones who own exactly 100 shares of Nexus Corp stock." Maria unfolded the paper. It was a share certificate in her name dated that morning. "Welcome to ownership, Ms. Chen. Your shareholder packet will arrive soon. Interesting reading about your rights to present matters of financial concern directly to the board." Diane patted Maria's shoulder. "I'll be at my desk if you need anything. Historical data, for instance. 20 years worth. Amazing what accumulates in forgotten folders." After Diane left, Maria sat staring at the share certificate, understanding the gift she'd been given. Not just stock, but standing. A voice that couldn't be silenced through HR protocols. She pulled up the Meridian files James had sent, cross-referenced them with the new invoice Diane had flagged, and began building a timeline. What emerged was a pattern so clear it might as well have been signed. Every Meridian invoice coincided with Harrison's travel schedule. Services were billed during conferences he attended, consulting happened during his golf tournaments, and deliverables were always conveniently intangible. Strategic advisement, market analysis, competitive intelligence. Her desk phone rang. The display showed Harrison's extension. "Maria, my office, now." The walk to the executive suite felt longer than usual, her low heels clicking against the polished floor in a rhythm that sounded like a countdown. Harrison's office occupied the building's northeast corner, all glass and chrome, and carefully curated success. Awards lined one wall, photos with minor celebrities and major politicians decorated another. The man himself stood behind his desk, backlit by morning sun that turned him into a corporate deity. "Sit, Edson," he said. She remained standing. His jaw tightened slightly. I've reviewed your recent reports. Your obsession with Meridian Solutions is becoming problematic. I'm simply documenting vendor relationships as part of my operational analysis. No, you're conducting a witch hunt, and it ends now. He opened his desk drawer, pulled out a manila folder. This is your new assignment. Inventory analysis, specifically office supplies. I want a full audit of printer paper usage, pen allocation, sticky note consumption. Due Monday. Maria looked at the folder, understanding the humiliation perfectly. From strategic analysis to counting paper clips. This isn't within my job description. Your job description is whatever I say it is. Unless you'd prefer to discuss alternative arrangements with HR, the threat hung between them like a blade. Maria took the folder, feeling its weight not of paper, but of intentional degradation. One more thing, Harrison added, his voice dropping to silk. I know you've been talking to James Weston. Facilities reports to me now. He's been reassigned to night shift effective immediately. For efficiency. The smile returned sharp as winter. We wouldn't want any more collaborative initiatives that waste company time. Maria left his office with the folder clutched against her chest. Rage building in her throat like a scream. But she swallowed it, stored it, converted it to fuel. In the elevator, she texted James. Night shift, I'm sorry. His response came quickly. Don't be, gives me access to the building when no one's watching. Back at her desk, Maria opened the humiliating assignment and discovered something interesting. Harrison had been sloppy in his pettiness. The folder contained not just her new busy work, but also a printed email chain he'd forgotten to remove. The thread discussed Project Clearwater, a supposed efficiency initiative that would outsource the entire operations department till she had to read it twice to believe it Meridian Solutions. Her job wasn't just being threatened. Her entire department was being sold to Harrison's personal cash machine. She photographed every page with her personal phone, then did what any good employee would do. She began counting office supplies. But while she conducted her menial audit, her mind ran calculations of a different sort. 3 weeks until the board meeting, 22 employees in operations who didn't know their jobs were being bartered. One facilities engineer with night access, one treasurer with 2 decades of files, and one shareholder with nothing left to lose. That evening, as the office emptied and shadows stretched long across the cubicle farm, Maria stayed at her desk dutifully cataloging paperclip distribution. Harrison walked past on his way out, paused at her desk. Good to see you embracing your new role, he said. Maybe there's hope for you yet. She looked up, met his eyes directly. I'm learning a lot about resource allocation. Something flickered in his expression, gone before she could name it. Don't stay too late. Wouldn't want you burning out on office supplies. After he left, Maria continued her inventory for exactly 15 more minutes, then switched to her real work. She pulled up the shareholder portal, read through the bylaws Diane had mentioned, and found what she was looking for. Section 7.3, Shareholder Proposals for Matters of Financial Concern. Any shareholder could request floor time at the quarterly review. The request had to be submitted at least 2 weeks in advance with supporting documentation. She began typing request for shareholder presentation regarding operational efficiency and vendor relationship analysis. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Building's empty except for security. Loading dock camera has a blind spot by the recycling bins. Just saying. Jay. Maria smiled for the first time in days. She saved her work, locked her screen, and headed for the exit. Carl was back at the security desk starting his night shift. Working late, Miss Chen, just trying to stay ahead of things. He nodded, buzzed her out. You know, Ms. Chen, I've been here a long time. Seen a lot of folks come and go. The ones who last aren't always the loudest or the most powerful. They're the ones who pay attention. He tapped his temple. The ones who remember that everything leaves a trail. In the parking lot, the sodium lights hummed their orange song, and Maria's 10-year-old Honda looked small and tired next to the remaining luxury vehicles. But it started on the first try, and that was all that mattered. She drove home through the suburban streets of Fairfield Heights past identical townhouses and carefully maintained lawns, thinking about trails and evidence and the difference between being right and being heard. At home, she opened her laptop and found an encrypted folder James had shared, night reading. Inside were 5 years of facilities, reports, maintenance logs, vendor access records, and something she hadn't expected, security footage logs showing Harrison's badge accessing the building at unusual hours, always coinciding with dates that Meridian Solutions personnel were on site. Her phone rang. Diane's name appeared on the screen. "Can't sleep either," the treasurer asked. "Reading some interesting history." "Good. You should know that tomorrow Harrison's implementing phase 2 of his efficiency protocol, email monitoring software. Everything goes through his team's review." Diane paused. "But they haven't thought about the old systems, the ones we used before the cloud migration. Still accessible if you know where to look." "And do you know where to look?" "Kiki de. Honey, I built those systems. Meet me at the Fairfield Diner tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. Bring your personal laptop." Maria agreed and hung up, then returned to the files James had sent. One name kept appearing in the access logs. Sandra Kim listed as a Meridian Solutions consultant, badging in exclusively during Harrison's late-night visits. But according to LinkedIn, Sandra Kim was Harrison's sister-in-law, a real estate agent with no technology background whatsoever. The web grew clearer with each document. This wasn't just inflated invoices or favoritism. This was systematic fraud using a vendor relationship to funnel money to family members while planning to eliminate the very department that might have caught it, and the employees whose jobs would disappear. They'd never see it coming. Maria thought about her colleagues, David, who just bought his first house, Jennifer, pregnant with twins, Robert, 2 years from retirement. All of them would be casualties of Harrison's efficiency protocol, their livelihoods sacrificed to feed a lie. She closed her laptop and lay in the dark listening to the suburban night. Somewhere in this same suburb, Harrison was probably sleeping soundly in his executive home, confident in his control. But control, Maria had learned, was only as strong as the systems that supported it. And systems, especially complex ones, always had vulnerabilities. The Fairfield Diner at 6 a.m. was a capsule of another era, all red vinyl booths and chrome fixtures smelling of bacon grease and strong coffee. Diane had claimed a corner booth, her personal laptop, already open, reading glasses perched on her nose. "Order first," Diane said. "We're going to need fuel." They ordered eggs and hash browns and coffee that could strip paint, and while they waited, Diane turned her screen toward Maria. "The old system, still live, just deprecated. It never actually decommissions anything, they just stop looking at it." The interface was ancient, all green text on black background, but the data was gold. Every transaction from the past decade, unfiltered, unmonitored, unchanged. "How deep does this go?" Maria asked. "Deep enough to bury someone if we're careful. But we need more than data. We need a story. Board members don't read spreadsheets. They respond to narratives." Diane pulled up another window. "This is Harrison's employment history. Notice anything?" Maria studied the timeline. Harrison had worked at 4 companies in 12 years. Each tenure lasted exactly 2 to 3 years. Each exit was described as pursuing new opportunities. "He's a cycle," Maria said. "Come in, establish, control, extract value, leave before the audit." "Exactly, but here's what's interesting." Diane clicked to another screen. "I have a friend at Kellerman Industries, his last company. They discovered $500,000 in vendor fraud 6 months after Harrison left. Guess which vendor? Meridian Solutions." "Bingo. But they settled quietly, no publicity. Professional courtesy." Diane's expression hardened. "Well, I'm feeling less courteous these days." Their food arrived and they ate while building their case. The data painted a clear picture: $3 million in questionable payments over 18 months, services that couldn't be verified, consultants who didn't exist, and a department elimination plan that would conveniently destroy the evidence trail. "We need one more thing," Diane said. "A smoking gun. Something that directly links Harrison to knowledge of the fraud, not just the payments." Maria thought about the email chain in her folder, the Project Clearwater documents. "I might have something, but it's in the office. The office that now has monitoring software. James has night access. And Carl mentioned something about cameras having blind spots." Diane smiled. "Carl Washington. 23 years of watching and learning. You know, he has a master's degree in criminal justice. Could have been a detective, but he liked the quiet observation of security work." She pulled out a flip phone, the kind drug dealers used in television shows. "Untraceable. James has one too. Use these for coordination." They left the diner as the morning shift crowd arrived, men and women in work clothes and service uniforms, the people who kept the world running while executives played their games. Maria drove to work feeling like she was wearing a disguise, her usual professional clothes now a costume for a performance. The office buzzed with nervous energy. The new monitoring software had everyone paranoid conversations dropping to whispers, personal phones hidden in desk drawers. Harrison held court near the coffee station explaining how the software would optimize communication efficiency and ensure alignment with corporate values. Maria kept her head down, continued her supply inventory, and waited. At lunch, she received a text on the burner phone. Package in your car, under driver's seat. She found a manila envelope containing printouts from the old system transactions highlighted and annotated in Diane's precise handwriting. But the real treasure was a USB drive labeled insurance. That night, Maria plugged the drive into her personal laptop at home. It contained emails not from the company server, but from Harrison's previous employers, obtained through what Diane cryptically called professional networks. The messages showed the same pattern at each company-vendor relationships established within months of arrival invoices that escalated gradually and always a family connection hidden behind corporate veils. But one email stood out dated 6 months ago from Harrison to someone named Marcus at Meridian. Same playbook as Kellerman. Operations first, then IT. Clean sweep before anyone notices. Family dinner Sunday to discuss Sandra's expanded role. Maria stared at the screen. This wasn't just fraud, it was a confession of intent, a blueprint for corporate pillaging. She forwarded everything to her personal cloud storage, created multiple backups, and then did something she hadn't planned. She called her mother. Maria, it's late, honey. Everything okay? Mom, remember when you told me about that manager who tried to fire you for reporting safety violations? Her mother's voice warmed with memory. That bastard. Thought because I was just a cleaner, I wouldn't know my rights. But I kept every incident report, every photo of violations. When OSHA came calling, he learned different. What happened to him? Last I heard, he was managing a gas station in Nevada. Why do you ask? I'm learning about rights, Mom, and documentation. That's my girl. You fight smart, okay, not angry. Smart wins. After they hung up, Maria returned to the files, cross-referencing every transaction, building a timeline that would be undeniable. Her phone buzzed, the regular one. A text from Jennifer in operations. Did you hear they're announcing the Project Clearwater details tomorrow? Mandatory meeting. Maria's stomach dropped. They were accelerating the timeline. Tomorrow her colleagues would learn their fate while she sat on evidence that could stop it. But premature revelation would give Harrison time to maneuver, to spin, to bury the truth under corporate doublespeak. She texted the burner phone. They're moving fast. Tomorrow's announcement. James responded. Security logs show Harrison accessing building tonight, 10 p.m. with external visitors. Diane added, board meeting moved up. 5 days, not 2 weeks. Someone's nervous. Maria made a decision. I need to be in the building tonight. Too risky, James texted. Carl's on duty, Diane added. He sees everything, including nothing when necessary. At 9:45 p.m., Maria parked in the darkest corner of the Nexus lot away from the light poles. She wore black jeans and a dark hoodie, feeling ridiculous but invisible. The loading dock was, as James described, a pocket of shadow where the cameras couldn't quite reach. Carl was waiting by the service entrance. Evening walk, he asked casually. Needed fresh air. Plenty of that in the building. Third floor is especially fresh this time of night. He held the door open. I'll be doing my rounds. Takes exactly 45 minutes. Building's funny at night. Sounds carry differently. Sometimes you can hear conversations from the executive floor all the way down to operations. Maria understood. She had 45 minutes and Harrison was having a meeting upstairs. The third floor was tomb dark, except for emergency lighting. Maria navigated by memory to her desk, powered on her workstation. Using her credentials, she was supposed to be working late on inventory after all. While her official screen showed spreadsheets of office supplies, she accessed the shared drive where Project Clearwater files were stored and found them being deleted in real time. Someone was systematically removing every document related to the outsourcing plan. Maria quickly copied everything she could to a flash drive, watching files disappear, even as she saved them. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she worked, the only sound her breathing and the distant murmur of voices from above. Then clearly Harrison's laugh echoed down through the ventilation system, followed by words that made her freeze. By Friday, it'll be a done deal. Operations gone Meridian in, and nobody can prove anything because the paper trail won't exist. Another voice unfamiliar. What about that analyst Chen? Supply inventory. I've got her counting paper clips. She's neutralized. Maria's hands shook as she continued copying files. Neutralized. like she was a threat that had been contained, a problem solved. The rage she'd swallowed in his office rose again, but this time she channeled it into her fingers, saving everything, creating the trail they thought they were erasing. A door opened somewhere. Footsteps in the hallway. Maria killed her screen, crouched behind her desk in the darkness. The steps came closer, pause continued past. A flashlight beam swept the cubicle farm, Carl making his rounds, giving her warning. She waited until the footsteps faded, then extracted the flash drive and made her way to the stairwell. But instead of going down, she went up, drawn by terrible curiosity. The executive floor was lit but empty, except for Harrison's office, where shadows moved behind frosted glass. Maria crept closer, staying low until she could hear clearly. "The beauty is we're not technically lying," Harrison was saying. "Efficiency is improved when you eliminate inefficient people. And who defines inefficiency? We do. The board might ask questions," another voice said. "The board cares about stock price. I'll show them 20% savings on operational costs. They won't ask how." Papers rustled. "Besides, after Friday's announcement, any whistleblower will be job hunting, not troublemaking." "What about Morse, the treasurer?" "Retirement age. I've already suggested to HR that it might be time for fresh blood in finance. Someone who understands modern efficiency." Maria had heard enough. She slipped back to the stairwell, descended to the loading dock, and emerged into the humid night where Carl was conveniently checking the exterior doors. "Fresh air help?" he asked. "Very illuminating." He nodded. "Drive safe, Ms. Chen. Storm's coming tomorrow." At home, Maria uploaded everything to multiple cloud services, emailed copies to 3 different personal accounts, and created a physical backup on another flash drive that she sealed in an envelope addressed to her mother. Then she opened the board portal and updated her shareholder presentation request, attaching a single document, a summary that promised critical financial irregularities requiring immediate board attention. Her phone rang at midnight. "Diane, I just got a call from a board member, Patricia Henley. She saw your filing and wants to meet. Tomorrow lunch off-site." "How does she even know about it?" "Because I've been sending her birthday cards for 15 years, and because her daughter works in operations." "Jennifer, the one with twins on the way." Maria felt pieces clicking into place. "Diane, how long have you been planning this?" "I don't plan, honey. I just prepare. There's a difference. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be interesting." But sleep wouldn't come. Maria lay in bed thinking about all the times she'd stayed quiet. Chosen compliance over conflict, believed that good work would speak for itself. Her father had been the same way, a quiet man who fixed cars with methodical precision, never complained. Never pushed back until the cancer took him and left behind a garage full of perfectly organized tools that couldn't fix the one thing that mattered. She wouldn't be quiet anymore. The mandatory meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m., but the anxiety started at dawn. Operations employees clustered in nervous groups, sharing rumors, checking LinkedIn, updating resumes just in case. Maria arrived early, went to her desk, and continued her supply inventory as if nothing had changed. But she'd worn her best suit, the charcoal one she'd bought for her father's funeral, and her colleagues noticed. "Job interview?" David asked nervously. "Just feeling professional," Maria replied, counting boxes of staples with exaggerated focus. At noon, she met Patricia Henley at a restaurant in Bethesda, far enough from the office to avoid surveillance. Patricia was everything Harrison wasn't: understated wealth, genuine warmth, and eyes that missed nothing. "Diane speaks highly of you," Patricia began. "She also says you have information the board needs to see." Maria laid out the evidence: methodically inflated invoices, phantom consultants, the systematic plan to eliminate oversight by eliminating the overseers. Patricia listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes in a leather journal. "This is significant," Patricia said finally. "But Harrison has allies on the board. Golf buddies, social connections. They'll give him benefit of the doubt unless the evidence is ironclad and public." "How public, Kureishin?" "The quarterly review isn't just a board meeting. Major shareholders attend. Media sometimes. If you present this there with full documentation, it becomes record. It becomes undeniable." Patricia studied Maria's face. "But you understand what you're risking? Harrison will scorched earth your career if this doesn't land perfectly." "My career's already ash. I'm just choosing what grows from it." Patricia smiled. "Diane was right about you. The board meeting is Friday 9 a.m. You'll have 15 minutes. Make them count." They returned to the office separately. Maria arrived just as the all-hands meeting was beginning. The main conference room was packed standing room, only the air thick with anxiety and aggressive air conditioning. Harrison stood at the podium, his blue suit impeccable, his smile broad and false. Change is never easy. He began, but it's necessary for growth. Project Clearwater represents our commitment to efficiency, to innovation, to becoming the company of tomorrow. He clicked through slides showing graphs that went up and to the right, using words like synergy and optimization and strategic realignment. Then came the slide everyone feared, an organizational chart with operations grayed out, replaced by a box labeled Meridian Solutions Strategic Partner. This transition will begin Monday. Harrison continued. Meridian will assess all current operations roles and determine optimal placement. Some of you will transition to Meridian with competitive packages. Others will be offered generous severance as we right-size for the future. Jennifer raised her hand. What about our benefits, our health insurance? Meridian offers comprehensive packages for retained employees. And those not retained? Robert asked, his voice tight with pre-retirement panic. 3 months severance and COBRA eligibility. The room erupted. Voices overlapped, anger, fear, disbelief. Maria watched Harrison's smile never waver, his hands raised for calm, like a practiced politician. This was his element, chaos. He'd created, control he maintained. I understand your concerns, he said, voice cutting through the noise. But this decision comes from the highest levels. It's done. The best thing you can do is cooperate with the transition team. Maria stood up. The room quieted, everyone remembering her humiliation from weeks ago, wondering if she'd finally break. Question, she said calmly. Will Meridian Solutions be using the same consultants they've used for other services, like Sandra Kim? Harrison's smile flickered. I'm not familiar with individual consultant assignments. Really, because she badges in exclusively when you're here after hours. Family dinners must run late. The room went silent. Harrison's face flushed. Ms. Chen, I think you're confused. And frankly, your recent performance suggests you should focus on your own transition. My recent performance, do you mean counting paper clips? Or do you mean discovering 3 million in fraudulent invoices? Stucky na Renardoan, Shakun. That's enough, his voice dropped to ice. Security, please escort Ms. Chen out. But Carl, standing by the door, didn't move. Sorry, Mr. Vale. I only respond to safety threats. Don't see one here. Then I'll handle it myself. Harrison stepped down from the podium, moving toward Maria with the confidence of a man who'd never been physically challenged. James Weston stepped between them. Actually, I have a question too, about those after-hours building accesses. Facilities noticed some unusual patterns. You're on night shift, Weston. You shouldn't even be here. Sick day, James said cheerfully. Feeling much better now, though. Diane stood up from the back of the room. While we're asking questions, perhaps you could explain this morning's wire transfer to Meridian 300,000 for services that haven't been rendered yet. Harrison's composure cracked. This meeting is over. Everyone back to work. Chen Weston Morse, my office. Now. But Maria didn't move. I don't think so. See, I'm a shareholder now, and I've requested time at Friday's board meeting to discuss financial irregularities. Public record. Public meeting. The threat landed like a bomb. Harrison's face cycled through emotions, rage, calculation, fear before settling on cold fury. You have no idea who you're dealing with, he said quietly. Sure I do. You're the same guy who did this at Kellerman Industries, and Brennan Tech, and Coastal Dynamics. Same playbook, same vendor, same fraud. Maria pulled out her phone, showed him a photo of the email, same playbook as Kellerman. Your former colleagues were very helpful, professional networks, you know. Harrison lunged for the phone, but James caught his wrist. For a moment, violence hung in the air, like suspended rain. Then Harrison jerked free, straightened his jacket. You're all fired. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out. Can't fire me, Diane said pleasantly. Union contract. Treasurer position requires board approval for termination. I don't need termination. I'll bear you in legal fees. With what money? Maria asked. The companies that would be misuse of corporate funds. Your own discovery would be fascinating. The room watched like a tennis match, head swiveling between combatants. Someone was definitely recording on their phone. Several someones. Harrison pointed at Maria. You're done in this industry. I'll make sure you never work again. Probably, Maria agreed. But Friday morning, I'll still be talking to the board. With documents, with evidence, with proof that you've been stealing from the company and planning to steal more. He stormed out, leaving 200 employees in stunned silence. Then slowly someone started clapping. Jennifer, then David, then Robert. Soon the whole room was applauding, not triumphantly, but desperately, like people clapping to keep Tinkerbell alive. Maria sank into a chair, adrenaline leaving her shaky. James squeezed her shoulder. Diane winked. Carl nodded from the doorway. The next 2 days were war. Harrison's first salvo came that afternoon, a company-wide email announcing the voluntary resignation of Maria Chen and James Weston for violations of corporate policy. It locked them out of all systems. Different security, not Carl's team, escorted them from the building with their personal items in boxes. But Diane remained inside a mole in plain sight, feeding information through the burner phones. He's calling board members individually, she reported. Spinning stories. Says you're a disgruntled employee with mental health issues. That's oddly specific, Maria noted. He accessed your HR file. Saw the accommodation request for therapy appointments after your father's death. He's weaponizing your grief. Maria felt the violation like a physical wound, but she converted it to fuel, spending Thursday building her presentation with Patricia Henley's guidance. They met at Patricia's home in Potomac, a colonial that whispered old money. He's claiming you manipulated the data, Patricia said. Several board members are wavering. Then we need something incontrovertible, something he can't spin. What about the security footage, James suggested? The after-hours meetings with Meridian? He'll say they were legitimate planning sessions. Maria thought about Harrison's confidence, his certainty that he controlled the narrative. We need him to admit it, in front of everyone. And how do we manage that? By making him think he's already won. She outlined the plan. It was risky, dependent on Harrison's arrogance, but that arrogance was the most reliable thing about him. Patricia made phone calls, pulling strings with surgical precision. It's arranged. You'll present first 9 a.m. sharp. Harrison won't know until you're already speaking. That night, Maria couldn't eat. She stood in her apartment practicing her presentation to her reflection, 15 minutes. That would determine everything. Her mother called. Big day tomorrow. The biggest. Your father would be proud. He always said you got the fighter gene from me, but the strategic mind from him. Use both tomorrow. What if I fail? Then you fail standing up speaking truth. That's not failure, Maria. That's integrity. Friday morning arrived crisp and bright, unusual for August, as if the weather itself had decided to pay attention. Maria dressed carefully, the charcoal suit, minimal jewelry, her father's watch for courage. She arrived at Nexus Corp 30 minutes early, finding a crowd already gathering. Word had spread through operations, through social media, through the mysterious networks that connected corporate workers across the city. They came to witness. The boardroom was on the top floor, all windows and warm wood designed to impress and intimidate. Board members filed in with studied casualness, but Maria caught the tension in their movements. Harrison entered, last saw her at the presentation podium, and his face went white, then red. What is this, Sarm? Shareholder presentation, Patricia said smoothly. Properly filed, as you know. She's not an employee. She can't be here. She's a shareholder. She has every right. Harrison looked ready to argue, but the board chair, an elderly man named Wallace, raised his hand. Let's proceed. Miss Chen, you have 15 minutes. Maria clicked to her first slide, a photo of the operations team, all 22 faces. These are the people whose jobs will disappear Monday if Project Clearwater proceeds. She began. David Lynn, 7 years with the company, just bought his first house. Jennifer Henley, pregnant with twins, needs her health insurance. Robert Torres, 2 years from retirement, will lose his pension eligibility. This is emotional manipulation, Harrison interrupted. This is context, Maria continued calmly. Because fraud isn't just numbers. It's people hurt by lies. She clicked to the next slide, the Meridian invoices, line by line, highlighted and annotated. $3 million in 18 months. Services that can't be verified. Consultants who don't exist. Click. Sandra Kim listed as a senior technical consultant. Click. Sandra Kim's LinkedIn real estate agent, no technical background. Click. Sandra Kim's Facebook, Harrison Vale's sister-in-law. The board members shifted, uncomfortable. Harrison stood. These are baseless accusations. Then let's look at the patterns. Maria clicked through slides showing Harrison's employment history, the identical schemes at each company, the settlements that followed his departures. Same vendor, same inflation, same family members, same 2 to 3 year timeline. Circumstantial, Harrison said, but sweat beaded on his forehead. Is this circumstantial? Maria played audio from her phone, Harrison's voice from the late-night meeting. Same playbook as Kellerman, operations first, then IT, clean sweep before anyone notices. That's illegally recorded, it's inadmissible. This isn't a court, Mr. Vale. It's a board meeting, and boards care about patterns. Maria clicked to her final slide, an email from Marcus at Meridian, sent to Harrison yesterday. If this goes south, you're on your own. We never had this conversation. You should worry. How did you, your assistant Karen, the one you've been planning to replace with your nephew, she thought the board should see this. The room erupted. Board members talking over each other, Wallace banging his gavel for order. Harrison's face had gone past red to purple. This is corporate espionage. I'll sue everyone in this room. With what standing? Patricia asked calmly. You're about to be terminated for cause. You can't. I have a contract, which includes a morality clause and a fraud provision. Wallace stood his age, giving him gravity. Mr. Vale, I'm calling an emergency executive session. Please wait outside. This is a witch hunt. I transformed this company into a vehicle for theft, Maria said quietly. You transformed nothing. You just took. Harrison lunged at her, actually lunged, hands reaching for her throat. But Carl was there. Carl, who'd somehow gotten into the boardroom, Carl, with his 23 years of watching and waiting. He caught Harrison's arms, twisted them behind his back with practiced efficiency. That would be assault, Mr. Vale. Now we've got a safety threat. The board voted while Harrison was still being restrained. Unanimous immediate termination for cause, criminal referral to the authorities, full audit of all vendor relationships. The operations outsourcing was canceled. The department was safe. But Maria wasn't done. There's one more thing, she said as the board prepared to adjourn. The $3 million that went to Meridian. It's still recoverable. The payments are recent enough for clawback provisions. How do you know about clawback provisions? Wallace asked. I've been reading. Amazing what you learn when you're counting paper clips. The aftermath unfolded like dominoes falling upward, each impact lifting rather than toppling. Harrison was escorted from the building by actual police, not just security, his Porsche left in the executive lot like a monument to hubris. By noon, his login was terminated, his office locked, his name already being scraped from the parking space. The operations team gathered in the break room, 22 people who'd thought they were attending their own wake, but found themselves at a resurrection instead. Jennifer cried hormones, she claimed, but everyone knew better. Robert opened a bottle of champagne he'd been saving for retirement, saying this was close enough. David pulled Maria into a hug that lifted her off her feet. You saved us, he said. We saved us, Maria corrected. I just did the math. Diane appeared with a cake she'd apparently had ready because of course she had. It read, Happy Efficiency Day, in icing the exact blue of Harrison's favorite tie. The board offered Maria her job back with a promotion to Director of Operations. She negotiated for something better. The entire operations team got to keep their jobs with cost of living raises that had been frozen for 3 years. She'd take the director role, but only if James became deputy director, and Diane got an assistant treasurer to train her choice, not Harrison's nephew. You could have asked for more, Patricia told her later. I asked for what mattered. The criminal investigation that followed revealed the scope of Harrison's scheme, not just Nexus Corp, but a dozen companies over 15 years, $20 million funneled through Meridian to family members, friends, a network of false consultants that read like a casting call for corporate fraud. Harrison Vale, not even his real name it turned out, but Harold Miller from suburban Ohio, faced federal charges that would take years to unspool. But that was later. First came the small satisfactions. Karen, Harrison's former assistant, sending Maria a fruit basket with a note, for someone who counts things that matter. Carl, finally using his criminal justice degree, consulting with the FBI on the investigation, leading them through 23 years of observations he'd kept in personal notebooks. The vendor audit recovering not just the $3 million from Meridian, but another $2 million in overcharges from preferred partners who'd been preferred mainly for their kickbacks. Sandra Kim, the sister-in-law, turning state's evidence in exchange for immunity, revealing every family dinner where they'd planned their theft over pot roast and Pinot Noir. Marcus from Meridian arrested at his golf club wearing the same ugly yellow polo he'd worn in surveillance photos from his meetings with Harrison. 3 weeks after the board meeting, Maria stood in her new office. Harrison's old office, now stripped of its pretension and filled with plants Jennifer had brought. The awards wall was gone, replaced with a whiteboard for actual work. The executive chair had been donated to charity, replaced with something ergonomic and reasonable. James knocked entered with coffee and a folder. New vendor audit. Clean so far, but I flagged 3 contracts for review. Good, let's look at them together. They work side by side the way operations should work. Collaborative, transparent, honest. Through the windows, Northern Virginia sprawled in late summer green, and Maria thought about her father's garage tools arranged with perfect logic, everything in its place, ready for the work that needed doing. Her phone buzzed, a message from her mother. Saw the news about that manager. Nevada gas station looking unlikely now. Federal prison more likely. Proud of you. Maria smiled, saved the message, and returned to her spreadsheets. There were numbers to review, patterns to identify, operations to optimize, real optimization, not the kind that meant taking from others. That evening, the operations team gathered at Murphy's Pub, the dive bar they'd avoided when Harrison might appear, but which now felt like home again. They toasted with beer and wings and stories that grew more elaborate with each telling. Remember when he said you were neutralized? Jennifer laughed, now showing significantly with the twins. Remember when Carl took him down, David added. 20 years younger, and he handled him like a rent-a-cop with a shoplifter. Remember when Maria stood up in that meeting? Robert raised his glass. That was the moment, right there. When one person stands, others remember they have legs too. They drank to that, to standing, to remembering, to the small courage that becomes contagious. Later, walking to her Honda in the parking lot, Maria found Diane waiting. I wanted to thank you, Diane said, for not just saving yourself. You could have cut a deal, protected your own position. That was never an option. For Harrison, it would have been the only option. Diane handed her an envelope. That's not why I'm thanking you, though. Inside was a photo from the company picnic last year. The operations team at a picnic table laughing at something off camera. Harrison wasn't in it. He never attended employee events that didn't have photographers. But everyone else was there, even Carl in the background, watching and smiling. That's who you saved, Diane said. Not just jobs, people, community. The thing Harrison never understood because he couldn't put a price on it. Maria kept the photo on her desk, a reminder of what mattered. Operations ran better without Harrison's efficiency protocols because actual efficiency came from people who cared about the work, not those who cared about extracting value from it. The board, chastened by their near miss with disaster, implemented real oversight, the kind that prevented future Harrisons from taking root. 6 months later, Maria testified at Harrison's trial. She wore the charcoal suit again, her father's watch, and spoke for exactly 15 minutes, the same time she'd had at the board meeting. She laid out the evidence with mathematical precision, without anger or satisfaction, just truth arranged in logical sequence. Harrison's lawyer tried to paint her as vindictive, jealous, a disgruntled employee seeking revenge. I wasn't disgruntled, Maria said calmly. I was disappointed. There's a difference. You destroyed a man's career over disappointment. No, he destroyed his own career through theft. I just counted it. The jury deliberated for 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. Harrison Harold got 8 years federal time, no minimum security, no club fed. Real prison for real crimes. Walking out of the courthouse, Maria felt no triumph, just a quiet settling, like books finally balanced after being off by pennies for years. James waited on the steps with Diane and Carl. Drinks, James suggested. Tea, Maria countered, somewhere quiet. They found a small cafe, ordered tea and pastries, and sat in comfortable silence. The news would call it a victory for corporate accountability. LinkedIn would light up with think pieces about whistleblowing and courage. But for Maria, it was simpler. She'd done her job. She'd analyzed operations, identified inefficiencies, and removed them. What now? Carl asked. Now we run a good department, Maria said. We treat people fairly. We do honest work. We remember that efficiency isn't about taking more. It's about wasting less. And that's it. That's everything. A year later at the company picnic, Maria watched her team still complete, still intact, playing volleyball badly and laughing about it. Jennifer's twins toddled on the grass chasing bubbles. Robert wore a retired but consulting t-shirt, having reached his pension, but staying on part-time to train his replacement. His choice, not a forced transition. David had added a second story to his house, secure in his job, planning for the future. Patricia Henley stopped by Maria's picnic table. The board wanted me to sound you out. They're considering you for CFO when Diane retires. Diane's not retiring for 5 years. They like to plan ahead now. Learn that lesson. Maria considered it. Ask me in 4 years, I've got operations to run. Patricia smiled. You know, most people would jump at C-suite. Most people didn't count paper clips for Harrison Vale. I learned something from that. That every small thing matters. Every invoice, every contract, every person who thinks they're too insignificant to count. They all count, and someone needs to do the counting honestly. Patricia left, and Maria returned to watching her team, her people, her responsibility. The sun was setting over the corporate campus painting, everything gold, and she thought about her father one more time. How he'd run his garage with the same principle. Every bolt mattered, every customer counted, every repair was a promise kept. Her phone buzzed. A LinkedIn notification. Harrison had viewed her profile from federal prison, where apparently they had internet access during certain hours. She blocked him without hesitation. That chapter closed, that math complete. The story could end there with justice served and order restored. But real endings are messier, more textured, more human. 2 years after the trial, Maria got a letter forwarded through the company lawyers. Harrison's handwriting, careful cursive on prison stationery. Ms. Chen, I've had time to think. Too much time. I wanted you to know that I understand now what I did. Not just the theft that was always clear to me, even as I justified it, but what I did to people. To you. To the team. To the company that trusted me. I grew up believing that winning meant someone else had to lose. That success was about being smarter, faster, more ruthless. I turned that belief into a system and that system into a crime. You stood up to me not because you were vengeful, but because you were right. That distinction matters to me now. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that federal prison has an accounting program for inmates. I'm teaching other inmates basic bookkeeping, trying to give them skills that don't involve taking from others. It's not redemption, it's just addition and subtraction. But it's honest. Harrison Vale, Harold Miller. Maria read the letter twice, then filed it away. She didn't respond. Some conversations were complete in their silence. But she thought about it sometimes late in the office, reviewing the day's numbers. How easy it was to slide from rounding errors to lies, from efficiency to exploitation, from leadership to theft. The line was thin, maintained only by the people willing to say, this is wrong, this stops here, this matters. The company thrived without Harrison's efficiency. Profits grew through actual innovation, not extracted value. The operations team expanded, hiring new analysts, building systems that caught discrepancies before they became crimes. Maria instituted monthly reviews where anyone could raise concerns without fear, where transparency wasn't a buzzword, but a practice. She kept 3 things on her desk: the team photo Diane had given her, her father's watch repaired and running, and a box of paper clips, the expensive kind, the ones that held things together properly. Carl retired on his 25th anniversary with full honors and a consulting contract to train security and observation and intervention. At his retirement party, he pulled Maria aside. You know what I learned in all those years of watching? He asked. Tell me. Most people are good. They want to do right. But sometimes they need someone to go first to show them it's possible to stand up. You went first. You could have stopped him earlier. You saw everything. Carl nodded. I saw, but seeing isn't the same as proving. And proving isn't the same as someone caring enough to listen. You made them listen. We made them listen. That's the other thing I learned. It's never just one person. It's always a group pretending to be alone until someone proves otherwise. The party continued around them, operations and security and finance, and even some board members mixing, like they hadn't before Harrison, like they wouldn't have during his reign. Maria watched her colleagues, her friends, her responsibility, and felt the weight of it, not heavy but substantial, like good paper, the kind that holds ink properly. 5 years later, when Diane did retire, Maria took the CFO role. Her first act was to eliminate the executive parking spaces. Her second was to institute a vendor audit system that ran continuously, algorithm-assisted, but human-verified, catching patterns before they became problems. She never forgot the paper clips, the humiliation of that assignment that had become her weapon. Every quarter she reviewed office supply orders, personally, not because she needed to, but because she chose to. Because someone should pay attention to the small things, the boring things, the things that revealed everything, if you knew how to count. James ran operations with the same principle: care for people, first numbers, second, but never ignore either. The department became known industry-wide for its retention rates, its innovation, its refusal to sacrifice employees for efficiency. Jennifer's twins grew old enough to attend Bring Your Kids to Work Day. They sat in Maria's office, now the CFO suite, but still filled with plants, still human-scaled, and asked what she did all day. "I count things out," Maria told them. "That sounds boring." "Sometimes it is, but counting things honestly means people keep their jobs, their homes, their futures. That's not boring. That's everything." They didn't understand, not really, but maybe one day they would. Maybe one day they'd stand in a conference room watching someone powerful lie and remember that someone once stood up, counted honestly, and changed what was possible. The last time Maria saw Harrison was at an industry conference years after his release. He was working for a small nonprofit teaching financial literacy to former inmates. He'd aged badly, prison did that, but his eyes were clear in a way they'd never been in his corporate days. They passed in a hallway between sessions. He stopped, started to speak, stopped again. "Ms. Chen," he finally said. "Mr. Miller," she replied using his real name. "Thank you," he said. "For what temenament? For stopping me. I would have kept going. It would have gotten worse. I didn't stop you for you. I know, that's why it matters." They parted without shaking hands, without forgiveness or friendship, just acknowledgement of what had happened and what had been prevented. Maria attended her session on ethical financial practices. Harrison attended his on second chances. The conference continued around them, hundreds of professionals pretending business was just numbers, not knowing or caring that every spreadsheet was a story, every invoice, a choice, every efficiency, a decision about what mattered and who counted. That night in her hotel room, Maria video called her mother. "How's the conference?" "Educational." "Learn anything new?" Maria thought about Harrison's aged face, his clear eyes, his thank you that she hadn't wanted but maybe needed to hear. "I learned that endings aren't always endings. Sometimes they're just the place where one story stops and another begins." That's very philosophical for a CFO. "I'm a very philosophical counter of paperclips." Her mother laughed, and Maria felt the sound like warmth, like home, like all the small things that added up to a life lived honestly. The story ends where it began, in a conference room with presentations and spreadsheets and people making choices about what matters. But now Maria sits at the head of the table, and when young analysts present their findings, she listens. She looks up from her phone. She pays attention to the small discrepancies that reveal large truths. And when someone powerful tries to silence someone vulnerable, when efficiency becomes a weapon against those who do the actual work, when the system protects those who abuse it, Maria stands up. Not with revenge in her heart, but with receipts in her hand, evidence in her files, and the quiet certainty that justice isn't about destroying the guilty, it's about protecting the innocent. She keeps a box of paper clips in her desk drawer, the good kind, the ones that hold. Sometimes she counts them, remembering a time when counting paper clips was meant to humiliate her, break her, neutralize her. Now she counts them because the small things matter, because attention is a form of respect, because someone needs to keep track of what holds everything together. The company thrives, the team endures, the work continues. And in a federal halfway house in Ohio, a man named Harold Miller teaches formerly incarcerated people how to balance books, how to track inventory, how to count honestly. He tells them about a woman who counted paper clips and brought down a corruption scheme, who stood in a boardroom and spoke truth to power, who saved 22 jobs by refusing to be quiet. He doesn't tell them she was right and he was wrong. That's too simple. He tells them that systems are only as good as the people willing to maintain them, that efficiency without ethics is just theft with a business plan, that every number in every spreadsheet represents a person with a life, a family, a future that matters. Some of his students understand. Some don't. But a few, the ones who've been on both sides of exploitation, who know what it's like to be counted out, dismissed, neutralized, they get it. They learn to count honestly. They learn to stand up. They learn that revenge isn't the opposite of justice. Indifference is. Maria never knows about these classes, these students, these small redemptions. But she wouldn't be surprised. People are patterns, and patterns can change, not easily, not often, but possibly. That possibility is what makes the counting worthwhile, what makes standing up necessary, what makes justice more than just revenge with better documentation. The last seen Maria at her desk late on a Friday, everyone else gone home. She's reviewing quarterly reports, finding the patterns protecting her people. Her phone buzzes a text from Jennifer, now director of strategic planning twins, asleep, sending a photo from the school science fair, where they'd presented a project on how my mom's boss saved our family. Maria smiles, saves the photo, returns to her spreadsheets. Outside Northern Virginia settles into another suburban evening, all the office buildings emptying, all the workers heading home, most of them never knowing how close they came to losing everything to someone's efficiency protocol. She counts the last column, balances the last equation, saves her work. The building's HVAC system sighs into its nighttime setting. Security makes their rounds, not Carl anymore, but people he trained, people who watch and remember and understand that everything leaves a trail. Maria locks her office, walks through the empty operations department, past the desks of people whose jobs exist because she counted paper clips and refused to be quiet. The elevator descends with its familiar mechanical hum. The parking lot spreads out under sodium lights, her Honda, waiting faithfully in a regular spot, no executive privileges needed or wanted. She drives home through streets she knows by heart, past the Fairfield Diner, where Diane still meets her for Saturday breakfast, past the courthouse, where Harrison was sentenced, past all the small places where large battles were fought and won. At home, she makes tea, sits on her small balcony, and watches the suburbs settle into sleep. Somewhere, Harold Miller is probably preparing lesson plans for tomorrow's financial literacy class. Somewhere, Jennifer is checking on her twins one more time. Somewhere, James is reviewing vendor contracts with the suspicious eye of someone who knows what to look for. And here Maria Chen sits with her tea and her thoughts and her quiet satisfaction of a job done well, a battle fought cleanly, a victory earned through patience and documentation, and the simple refusal to let wrong become normal. The taste of revenge, it turns out, is not sweet. It's not bitter either. It tastes like balance, like accuracy, like the clean precision of numbers that finally add up correctly. It tastes like justice, complicated, necessary, and worth every counted paperclip along the way.